The cantina's neon lights flickered against the metal walls, casting strange shadows across the faces of dozens of different species. The air was thick with smoke from exotic pipes and the smell of alien alcohol. In the far corner, away from the main crowd, sat two figures who seemed completely out of place among the rowdy spacers and black market dealers. Heltar's massive form filled one side of the booth, his thick armored shell bearing the scars of 100 battles. Each mark told a story of plasma burns, energy blasts, and close calls with death. His forearms rested on the table, one holding a drink that steamed with purple vapor. The Vaxian warrior had seen more combat than most beings saw in 10 lifetimes, but tonight his compound eyes held something different, something that looked almost like fear. Across from him sat Marcus Chen, a young human journalist barely out of his 20s. His recording device sat between them, its small red light blinking steadily. Marcus had come to this remote station, chasing stories about the recent war, expecting to find tales of heroic battles and glorious victories. What he found instead was something much more disturbing. "The war changed everything," Heltar began, his voice like rocks grinding together. "Before humans joined the galactic community, we thought we understood warfare. We had rules, honor codes, ways of fighting that made sense." He lifted his drink with one of his secondary arms, the liquid inside glowing softly. "My people, the Vaxians, we were considered the finest warriors in this sector. Our shock troops could break any defensive line. Our commanders never lost a battle." Marcus leaned forward, his eyes bright with curiosity. "But something changed when you fought humans." "Everything changed." Heltar's mandibles clicked nervously, a sound like breaking glass. "You have to understand, when we first encountered your species, we laughed. Small, soft, no natural weapons or armor. Your ships were crude, your weapons primitive. We thought conquering Earth would take maybe a week." The cantina around them erupted in laughter, as some trader told a joke, but neither being at the corner table smiled. The mood between them was too heavy, too filled with dark memories. "Tell me about the first battle," Marcus said quietly, adjusting his recording device. Heltar's eyes went distant, staring past the journalist towards something only he could see. "Meridian Outpost, a small research station on the edge of your territory. We sent 2,000 of our best shock troops to take it. Intelligence said it was defended by maybe 50 humans. That sounds like terrible odds for your people." "That's what we thought too." Heltar's laugh was bitter. "We were so confident that our fleet commander didn't even bother to watch the battle. He sent me down with the assault force as an observer, thinking it would be good training for the younger warriors." Marcus made notes on his tablet, trying to capture every detail. "What happened when you arrived?" "The outpost was nothing special, just a few buildings surrounded by a basic energy barrier. We could see the humans moving around inside, going about their daily business like they didn't have a care in the world. Some of them were even playing games in the courtyard." Heltar paused to take another drink, his scarred face reflecting the cantina's lights. "Our commander, General Thexvor, activated the communication array. Standard procedure was to demand surrender, give them a chance to avoid unnecessary death. And they refused. Worse. The human commander, Captain Dongwoo Kim, came on screen. Young man, maybe 30 of your years, clean uniform, calm expression. Thexvor gave him the standard ultimatum, surrender or face complete destruction, the E. Vaxian warrior's compound eyes narrowed at the memory. Kim listened to the whole speech without saying a word. When Thexvor finished, there was silence for maybe 10 seconds. Then Kim started laughing. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Laughing? Not crazy laughter, not scared laughter. It was the kind of laugh you make when someone tells you a joke that's so bad it's funny. Kim looked directly at our general and said, 2,000 troops for 50 humans? Either you're trying to insult us, or you really don't know what you're dealing with. What did your general say? Thexvor was furious. No one had ever mocked him like that. He demanded immediate surrender, threatening to kill every human in the outpost if they didn't comply within 1 hour. Heltar's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Kim's response is, something I'll never forget. He smiled, looked directly into the camera, and said 3 words that changed everything. What were they? Come and take it. The cantina around them seemed to fade away as Heltar continued his story. We thought he was insane. What rational being challenges overwhelming force like that? But as I learned later, rationality is a luxury humans abandon when they need to. Marcus could feel the weight of the story pressing down on him. This wasn't just about one battle. This was about something fundamental about human nature that even humans themselves might not understand. "What happened next?" he asked. Heltar's scarred face twisted into what might have been a smile. "Next, we learned why humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy." The lights in the cantina dimmed as the station's artificial night cycle began, but Heltar's story continued without pause. His forearms gestured as he spoke, reliving memories that clearly still haunted him. "The first day of the siege went exactly as we planned," Heltar said, his voice heavy with regret. "Our plasma cannons destroyed their main power generator within the first hour. The energy shields around the outpost flickered and died. We cut their water supply lines and jammed all their communication frequencies." Marcus watched the alien warrior's face carefully. Even through the scarred carapace, he could see the pain of memory. By nightfall, we had the entire outpost surrounded. No way in, no way out. Our thermal scanners showed exactly 50 human heat signatures inside the main building. General Thexavor was so confident that he ordered his troops to set up a comfortable perimeter. He even brought his personal chef down from the ship. "You thought it was over?" "We knew it was over. Or so we thought." Heltar's mandibles clicked, in what might have been dark amusement. "Day 2 we expected surrender. Instead we got silence, no communication attempts, no white flags, nothing. It was like they had all just disappeared." The Vaxian took another drink, the purple liquid glowing brighter in the dim cantina light. "Day 3, Thexavor got impatient. He ordered bombardment of the outer buildings, thinking the noise and destruction would break their spirits. The buildings collapsed exactly as expected, sending up huge clouds of dust and debris. But the humans still didn't surrender. That's when things got strange. Our listening posts picked up sounds from inside the main building. At first we thought it was crying or screaming. But when our translators processed the audio..." Heltar paused, his compound eyes reflecting the cantina's neon lights. "They were singing." Marcus stopped writing and looked up. "Singing what?" "Old human songs. Battle hymns from your ancient wars. Folk songs about home and family. One of them was playing some kind of stringed instrument they had salvaged from the wreckage. 50 humans, cut off from everything, facing certain death, and they were having what you might call a concert." The journalist shook his head in disbelief. "How did your troops react to that?" "Confusion at first, then anger. Thexavor thought they were mocking us. He ordered a full-spectrum scan of the building, expecting to find some kind of secret weapon or hidden escape tunnel. Do you know what we found instead?" "What?" "They were rationing their last food and water, sharing everything equally, taking care of their wounded, maintaining their weapons. And yes, singing together like they were at some kind of festival instead of under siege." Heltar's voice grew darker. "That's when I started to understand. This wasn't defiance or stupidity. This was something else entirely. Something we had never encountered before in all our wars across the galaxy." Marcus leaned forward, completely absorbed in the story. "What happened on day 4? Day 4 changed everything. We woke up to find 3 of our supply depots had been hit during the night, not destroyed completely, just enough to slow us down. Ammunition stolen, vehicles sabotaged, communication equipment fried. But how? You had them surrounded." "That's what we thought too. But your Sergeant Yunwoo Park had other ideas. Somehow he and 4 other humans had slipped past our sensors. In the middle of the night. Our perimeter guards never saw them coming or going." Heltar's scarred face twisted into something like admiration. "We increased security, doubled the guards, installed motion detectors everywhere. Night 5, they hit us again. This time they took out our main communication array and 3 more supply caches, and they left something behind." "What did they leave?" "A note, written in perfect Vaxian script. It said, 'Thanks for the ammunition, we'll put it to good use.' Signed by Park himself." The cantina around them had grown quieter as the night shift took over, but Marcus barely noticed. "How were they getting past your defenses?" "We never figured it out completely." Later analysis suggested they were using the old mining tunnels that ran under the outpost. Tunnels so narrow and dangerous that our troops couldn't follow them. Park and his team were crawling through spaces barely wide enough for a human body, moving supplies and weapons through paths that should have collapsed, under their own weight. Heltar paused, his expression growing darker. But the real psychological warfare was just beginning. Every morning we would find evidence of their night raids, but they weren't just taking supplies. They were leaving messages, jokes written, on our equipment. Pictures drawn in the dirt showing humans thumbing their noses at us. One morning someone had arranged our stolen ammunition into an arrow pointing directly at General Thexvor's command tent. Your general must have been furious, beyond furious. By day 6 we had lost more equipment and ammunition to these raids than the humans had started with. Our troops were exhausted from staying awake all night, jumping at every shadow. Morale was falling apart, and then Heltar's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Then the human reinforcements arrived. Not a massive fleet, just 3 ships, but they came in fast and hard, hitting our orbital positions before we knew what was happening. While we were dealing with the space battle, Park's team opened the outpost from the inside. The alien warrior finished his drink and set the cup down with trembling hands. When we finally breached the main building, we found Captain Kim at his command post. 17 separate wounds from shrapnel and energy weapons. He should have been dead 3 times over, but he was still conscious, still giving orders to his men, still coordinating the defense. Marcus stared at his notes, trying to process what he was hearing. He survived all that? Not just survived. When the relief ships landed and the medics reached him, Kim's first words weren't about his wounds or the pain. He asked if all his people had made it out alive. When they told him yes, he smiled and finally allowed himself to pass out. Heltar looked directly at the young journalist. That's when I understood what we were really fighting. Not just humans, but something humans represent. The idea that surrender is always a choice, never a requirement. That hope is a weapon more dangerous than any plasma cannon or fusion bomb. The cantina fell silent around them, as other patrons strained to hear the rest of the story. The cantina's atmosphere grew heavy as Heltar's 4 hands wrapped around his drink, all of them shaking slightly. The purple liquid inside rippled with each tremor, casting strange shadows on the metal table between them. Marcus could see that this next story was different, more personal somehow. Crimson Valley, Heltar began, his voice barely above a whisper. That battle should have been our greatest victory. We had orbital superiority, 3 full divisions of ground troops, and the latest plasma artillery systems. The humans had maybe 200 soldiers dug into the valley floor. He paused, his compound eyes reflecting the cantina's flickering lights. The valley got its name from the red mineral deposits in the rocks, but after that battle, everyone said it was named for all the blood that soaked into the ground. Marcus adjusted his recording device, making sure to capture every word. How long did the bombardment last? 18 hours straight. Our artillery ships in orbit rained death on that valley until the ground itself was molten glass in some places. The thermal readings showed massive explosions, collapsing tunnels, everything we expected. When the bombardment finally stopped, even our own soldiers were shaken by the destruction. Heltar took a long drink, the liquid seeming to calm his nerves slightly. General Thexivor ordered the advance at dawn, 3,000 Vaxian shock troops moving down into the valley to clean up whatever was left. We expected to find crater-filled, wasteland and maybe a few scattered bodies. But that's not what you found. The first sign something was wrong came from our scouts. They reported movement in the ruins of what had been the human medical station. Not the scattered movement of survivors trying to hide, but organized activity, people working together. The alien warrior's scarred face darkened with memory. When the main force reached the valley floor, we could hear it before we could see it. Someone was singing. Not battle songs this time, but something soft and gentle. A human lullaby, we learned later. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. After 18 hours of bombardment, that's when we saw her. Corpsman Ji Woo Lee, barely 25 years old according to her records. She was working in what was left of the medical station, which was really just a few standing walls and a partially collapsed roof. The rest was rubble and twisted metal. Heltar's voice grew stronger as he continued, as if the telling was helping him process the memory. Lee had set up a makeshift operating theater using salvaged equipment and debris. She had wounded soldiers, laid out on improvised stretchers made from pieces of building material and torn uniforms. Human soldiers? That's what we expected. But as we got closer, our scopes revealed something that stopped our advance cold. Half the wounded were Vaxian troops, our own people, who had been caught in the bombardment or injured in previous skirmishes. And this human medic was treating them alongside her own wounded. Marcus stopped writing, his pen hovering over the paper. She was helping enemy soldiers. More than helping, she was singing to them. That lullaby we heard was for a young Vaxian trooper who couldn't have been more than the equivalent of 16 human years. His leg was nearly severed, and he was crying for his clutch mother. Lee was working on his wounds while humming to keep him calm. The cantina around them had grown almost silent, with other patrons leaning in to catch pieces of the conversation. Heltar seemed oblivious to the attention. Our thermal scans showed that Lee herself was seriously injured. Shrapnel had torn through her left side, and she was losing blood fast. Her uniform was soaked red, and there were burn marks across her arms from heated metal. But she kept working. What did your troops do when they found her? The squad leader, Sergeant Kexival, ordered her to surrender, standard protocol. But Lee didn't even look up from the patient she was treating. She just said, "I'll be with you in a minute. This one's bleeding pretty badly, and I need to get the artery closed." Heltar's mandibles clicked in what might have been amazement. Kexival repeated the surrender order, louder this time. Lee finished suturing the wound, then looked up with blood-covered hands. She asked, "Are any of your people hurt? I've got medical supplies, and I'm trained to treat Vaxian physiology." Marcus could hardly believe what he was hearing. She offered to treat more enemy soldiers. That's when things got really strange. One of our troops, Private Nexthor, had been hit by debris during the advance. Nothing serious, just a cut on his arm, but it was bleeding. Lee saw it immediately and started moving toward him with her medical kit. The alien warrior's voice grew heavy with emotion. Kexival tried to stop her, but she just said, "Medical emergency takes priority over everything else, that's the rule." She cleaned and bandaged Nexthor's wound while our entire squad watched in confusion. How did she know how to treat your people? She'd been studying Vaxian anatomy and physiology in her spare time, learned it from captured medical texts and observations of wounded prisoners, said every medic should understand how to help anyone who needs it, regardless of species. Heltar paused, his expression growing darker. That's when we noticed the dying soldier in the corner. Corporal Zexmar had been caught in the bombardment and suffered massive internal injuries. Our own medics had written him off as beyond help, but Lee took one look at him and grabbed her surgical tools. She operated on him, right there in the ruins, with our weapons pointed at her. She used instruments from her field kit and a piece of metal heated in the flames from a burning vehicle. No anesthetic, no proper surgical suite, just her hands and her training. The cantina had grown completely quiet now, with every patron listening to the story. Marcus could feel the weight of the moment. Lee worked for 3 hours straight, while her own blood dripped onto the operating surface. She talked to Zexmar the whole time, keeping him conscious, telling him stories about her home planet to distract him from the pain. When she finally closed the last incision, she collapsed from blood loss. Did he survive? Not only survived, but made a full recovery. When our reinforcements arrived and found the scene, they couldn't believe it. A human medic had saved the life of a Vaxian soldier, using improvised tools while under enemy fire, and dying from her own wounds. Heltar finished his drink and set the cup down with finality. Lee survived too, barely. Our field medics treated her wounds while she was unconscious. When she woke up, her first question was whether all her patients were stable. What happened to Corporal Zexmar? That's the most haunting part of the story. After the war ended, Zexmar requested asylum on a human world, said he couldn't return to a society that would see his life as less valuable than military objectives. He became a medic himself, working in refugee camps across the galaxy. The alien warrior looked directly at Marcus, his compound eyes reflecting something that might have been tears. He said that watching Lee work taught him what mercy really means, that seeing someone willing to die to save their enemies showed him a different way to live. Marcus felt the weight of the story settling over him like a heavy blanket. Where is she now? Lee? She's running a medical training school on the Outer Rim, teaching alien species how to treat human physiology, and humans how to treat everyone else. She says the galaxy needs more healers and fewer warriors. Heltar stood slowly, his massive frame casting long shadows across the cantina. But that's not the end of the story. What happened at Crimson Valley changed how both sides fought the war. Word spread through our ranks about the human medic who saved enemy lives. It made killing humans complicated. The cantina lights flickered, as if responding to the darkness in Heltar's voice. His forearms folded across his scarred chest. As he leaned back into the booth, his compound eyes staring at something beyond the physical world around them. "A Lieutenant Sung-Ho Yoon," Heltar whispered the name like it was a curse. "If I live for another 1,000 cycles, I will never forget that name. It haunts my dreams, whispers in the darkness when I try to sleep." Marcus felt the temperature in the cantina drop, though he knew it was just his imagination. "Tell me about Titan 7. Titan 7 was a mining operation on the edge of human space. Nothing special about it, just another asteroid facility pulling rare metals from the rock. Our intelligence said it was lightly defended, maybe a dozen security guards and some automated systems." Heltar's voice grew mechanical, as if he was reading from an old report. The facility was carved deep into the asteroid, with multiple levels connected by narrow maintenance shafts. Perfect for mining, terrible for defense, or so we thought. "What was your mission there?" "Simple extraction operation. Get in, secure the mining data, capture any humans for interrogation, destroy the facility. Standard procedure. I was leading a squad of 12 elite commandos, the best soldiers in the Vaxian military." The alien warrior paused, his mandibles clicking nervously. "We approached the asteroid in stealth mode, using sensor dampeners to avoid detection. The plan was to dock at the main airlock, breach the facility, and complete the mission within 2 hours. Marcus scribbled notes furiously, trying to capture every detail. "What went wrong?" "Everything started perfectly. We docked without triggering any alarms, cut through the airlock systems, and entered the facility. The corridors were empty, dimly lit, filled with the hum of mining equipment. It felt like a ghost ship." Heltar's voice grew darker. "We found the control center on level 3. All the computers were still running, displaying mining operations and ore processing data, but no people anywhere. It was like they had all just vanished." "Where were they?" "That's when we met Lieutenant Yoon. He appeared in the control center doorway like he had materialized from the walls themselves. Young human, maybe 28 years old, wearing a standard mining facility uniform. No weapons visible, hands raised in what looked like surrender. The cantina around them seemed to hold its breath as Heltar continued. "My squad leader, Corporal Vexkhan, ordered him to the ground. Standard prisoner protocol." Yoon complied. Immediately got on his knees, put his hands behind his head. Seemed like the easiest capture we'd ever made. But it wasn't. Vexkhan approached to apply restraints. The moment he got within arm's reach, Yoon moved, faster than any human should be able to move. 1 second he was kneeling in surrender. The next he had Vexkhan's sidearm and was rolling behind a bank of computers. Heltar's compound eyes reflected the memory like a recording. The firefight lasted maybe 30 seconds. Yoon used the computer terminals as cover, picking off my soldiers with precision shots. Not killing shots, just disabling hits to arms and legs. He could have killed all of us, but he chose not to. Marcus looked up from his notes. He was showing mercy? Worse, he was showing us that he was in complete control of the situation. When the shooting stopped, 6 of my 12 soldiers were down with non-fatal wounds. The rest of us were pinned behind inadequate cover, while Yoon had the high ground and unlimited ammunition from our own weapons. How did you get out of that? We didn't get out. Yoon let us go. He activated the facility's emergency evacuation system, which sealed all the blast doors and started pumping the atmosphere out of our section. We had maybe 5 minutes to get back to our ship before we suffocated. Heltar's voice grew bitter. As we retreated, Yoon's voice came over the intercom system. He said, "Tell your commanders that Titan 7 is under human protection. Next time, send more soldiers or don't come at all." That's when you called for orbital bombardment? Fleet Command was furious. No single human was supposed to be able to defeat an elite Vaxian squad. They ordered the complete destruction of Titan 7 as an example to other human outposts. The alien warriors' hands began to tremble again. I watched from orbit as our plasma cannons turned the entire asteroid into molten slag. The energy output was enough to vaporize a small moon. Nothing could have survived that bombardment. Nothing. Marcus felt a chill creeping up his spine. But somehow he did. We sent a recovery team to search the wreckage. They found what was left of Lieutenant Yoon's body in the ruins of the control center. DNA confirmation, dental records, everything matched. The man was definitely dead. Then what happened 2 weeks later? Heltar's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Our moon base at Kepler Station was supposed to be impregnable, automated. Defense systems, energy shields, a full battalion of guards. But someone walked right through all of that like it didn't exist. Someone? Lieutenant Seung-ho Yoon. Same face, same voice, same uniform. He appeared in our command center during the night shift, alone and unarmed. When the guards tried to arrest him, he handed them a data pad containing complete intelligence on our fleet movements. The cantina had grown completely silent, with every patron straining to hear the story. Marcus could feel the weight of their attention pressing down on the booth. The intelligence was perfect. Ship positions, patrol routes, supply schedules, everything. Our entire outer system defense fleet was destroyed within 72 hours because of that information. Thousands of Vaxian lives lost. How did he get that intelligence? That's what we wanted to know. We cornered him in the asteroid field near Kepler Station 3 days later. My personal ship, the Vengeance, hit him with a direct plasma cannon blast at point-blank range. I watched through the targeting scope as the energy beam vaporized his escape pod completely. Heltar's compound eyes fixed on Marcus with disturbing intensity. But 72 hours after that, long-range sensors detected a small human ship, rescuing civilian prisoners from our detention facility on Outpost 9. The ship's pilot identified himself as Lieutenant Seung-ho Yoon. The same man. Same voice, same tactical patterns, same impossible ability to be everywhere and nowhere at once. This time I didn't trust anyone else to handle it. I took a full strike team to Outpost 9 and cornered him personally. The alien warrior's voice became mechanical again, as if he was trying to distance himself from the memory. I used a molecular disruptor at point-blank range, watched his body dissolve at the cellular level. There was nothing left, not even atoms. Complete. Molecular dissolution. And then? And then I spent the rest of the war expecting to see him again. Every shadow looked like Yoon. Every ambush felt like his work. Even after the war ended, I kept looking over my shoulder, waiting for him to tap me on the arm and ask for directions. To the nearest enemy position, Heltar finished his drink in one gulp, the purple liquid glowing brightly as it went down. Human Command claimed it was 3 different soldiers with the same name. Coincidence, they said. But I knew better. What? Did you know? I knew that humans don't just refuse to die. They refuse to let death mean anything at all. Whether it was 1 man or 3, the message was clear. You can kill a human, but you can't kill what they represent. The alien warrior stood slowly, his massive frame casting long shadows across the cantina. That's the real horror of fighting humans. It's not that they're hard to kill, it's that killing them doesn't solve anything. The cantina's artificial lighting had dimmed to its lowest setting, casting long shadows across the metal walls. Most of the other patrons had left, leaving just a few late-night drinkers scattered across the bar. Heltar sat motionless in the booth, his forearms wrapped around his empty cup like he was trying to draw warmth from the cold metal. Kepler Prime, he said finally, his voice carrying the weight of years. That's where everything changed. That's where I learned the truth about what humans really are. Marcus looked up from his notes, sensing that this final story would be different from all the others. What made Kepler Prime so important? It was supposed to be our final victory, the last major human stronghold in the sector. Take Kepler Prime, and the war would be over. Humans would have no choice but to surrender. Heltar's compound eyes stared past Marcus toward the cantina's entrance, as if he could see through the walls to the stars beyond. We brought everything we had. 12 battlecruisers, 40,000 ground troops, orbital bombardment platforms, the works. The humans had maybe 5,000 defenders, and a civilian population of about 30,000. 30,000 civilians. Families, children, elderly, researchers, merchants, all the people who make a world worth living on. Our intelligence said the human commander, In-Ho Choi, had been ordered to evacuate the civilian population before we arrived. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. But they didn't evacuate? They tried, but our advanced scouts had arrived earlier than expected and cut off the main evacuation routes. The civilian transports were trapped in the system, sitting ducks for our fighters. Choi had a choice to make. Heltar lifted his empty cup, stared into it for a moment, then set it back down. Standard military doctrine would have been to abandon the civilians and preserve the military assets. Save the soldiers to fight another day. Any rational commander would have made that choice. But Choi didn't. Choi sent a message to our fleet commander, short and simple. He said the civilian evacuation would continue as planned, and his forces would provide protection until every non-combatant was safely away. He requested safe passage for the civilian ships. The alien warrior's mandibles clicked softly. Our commander laughed, told Choi that if he wanted to save the civilians, he could surrender the entire planet immediately. Otherwise, we would treat the evacuation ships as legitimate military targets. Marcus could feel the tension building in the story. What was Choi's response? He cut the communication channel. No negotiations, no counter-offers, nothing. Within an hour, we detected massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. Choi was powering up every defensive system on the planet, preparing for a fight he couldn't possibly win. Heltar's voice grew quieter as he continued. The battle lasted 3 days. Our orbital bombardment platforms pounded the surface defenses while our fighters engaged the evacuation fleet. But something was wrong. The human defensive fire was too accurate, too coordinated. They were shooting down our fighters faster than we could deploy them. How were they managing that? Choi had done something unprecedented. He had integrated the civilian evacuation ships into his defensive grid. Merchant vessels, passenger liners, even personal yachts were coordinating with military units to create overlapping fields of fire. The cantina around them seemed to fade away as Heltar's story continued. But the real shock came on day 2. Our sensors detected something that should have been impossible. The civilian ships weren't just running away, they were fighting back. Marcus stopped writing, his pen hovering over the paper. Civilians were fighting. Every ship with any kind of weapon system, no matter how small, was engaging our fighters. We had reports of luxury yachts ramming our scout ships, cargo haulers using their loading equipment as improvised weapons, even passenger liners organizing their own attack formations. But they weren't trained for combat. That's what made it so terrifying. They weren't trained, but they were determined. A 70-year-old human grandmother in a mining shuttle took out one of our best fighter pilots. A group of teenagers in modified racing ships destroyed an entire patrol squadron. Heltar's compound eyes reflected something that might have been tears. And through it all, Choi's voice was on every communication channel, coordinating the defense, encouraging the civilians, making sure every ship knew its role in the evacuation plan. How many civilians did they save? All of them. Every single non-combatant made it out of the system safely. But the cost? Heltar's voice trailed off as he struggled with the memory. What happened to Choi? On the 3rd day, our ground forces finally broke through the planetary defenses. We found Choi in the command center. Surrounded by the bodies of his staff, he had 17 different wounds, and his command console was sparking from battle damage. The alien warrior's voice grew stronger, as if the telling was helping him process the pain. When our troops entered the command center, Choi was still alive, still conscious. He looked up at our soldiers and asked if the last evacuation ship had made it to the jump point safely. And had it? Yes. The final civilian transport had jumped to hyperspace just minutes before our forces reached the command center. 30,000 lives saved, at the cost of 5,000 military personnel and one stubborn commander who refused to leave anyone behind. Heltar stood slowly, his massive frame casting long shadows across the empty cantina. That's when I understood what we were really fighting. Not just humans, but the idea that some things are worth dying for, that protecting the innocent is more important than military victory. Marcus looked up from his notes, sensing that the story was nearing its end. "What did you do?" "I was leading the assault team that reached the command center. When I saw Choi lying there, barely alive, but still asking about the civilians, I made a decision that ended my military career." "What decision?" "I ordered my troops to stand down, told them to provide medical assistance to the wounded humans instead of taking prisoners. How do you fight someone who dies for strangers? How do you defeat an enemy who sees you as a future ally rather than a permanent threat?" The cantina had grown completely silent, with even the distant sounds of the space station seeming to fade away. What happened next? Word of what happened at Kepler Prime spread through both fleets. Vaxian soldiers started questioning orders, refusing to fire on civilian targets. Human defenders began offering medical aid to wounded enemies. The war was still going on, but something fundamental had changed. Heltar moved toward the cantina's exit, his movements stiff with old wounds and older memories. Within 6 months, both sides were looking for ways to end the conflict, not because we were tired of fighting, but because we realized we were fighting the wrong war. "What do you mean?" "We thought we were fighting for territory, for resources, for dominance. But humans were fighting for something else entirely. They were fighting for the idea that the galaxy could be better than it was, that different species could work together instead of just surviving separately." The alien warrior paused at the door, his scarred face turned toward the stars visible through the cantina's viewport. "That's why I agreed to this interview. Because humans need to understand what they are. You're not just another species competing for resources. You're evolution's answer to the question, what if survival wasn't enough?" He placed payment on the table, the metal coins clinking softly in the quiet cantina. "The war ended because we realized we weren't fighting humans. We were fighting the future itself, and the future always wins." As Heltar walked toward the exit, Marcus called out, "Wait, what happened to you after the war?" The alien veteran paused without turning around. "I became a teacher. I run a school on the Outer Rim, where young beings from different species learn to work together. Humans, Vaxians, Cytherians, others. They don't see each other as enemies anymore. Do you still have nightmares about the war?" Heltar's compound eyes reflected the cantina's lights one last time. "Every night, but they're different now. Instead of seeing the battles and the blood, I dream about the singing. Those human voices rising up from impossible situations, turning despair into hope." He walked to the door, then paused and looked back at Marcus. "Tell them," he said softly, "that some of us still hear the singing, and that it's the most beautiful sound in the galaxy." The door slid shut behind him, leaving Marcus alone in the cantina with pages of notes and a story that felt too important to be just another interview. Outside the viewport, the stars seemed brighter somehow, as if they were singing too. Marcus stared at his notes for a long time, understanding that he had just been given more than a story about war. He had been given a glimpse of humanity's true place in the galaxy, and the responsibility that came with it. The cantina's lights dimmed further as the station's night cycle deepened, but Marcus continued writing, knowing that this story needed to be told, not just as history, but as a promise of what the future could hold. The end.